October 1, 1946 from Nuremberg, Germany. Following more than 10 months on a trial, 21 defendants, among the most influential political, military, and financial leaders of Nazi Germany, have their sentences read. These high-ranking officials of the criminal Nazi government had to at last own their crimes and answer before an International Military Tribunal ready to punish them for terrible deeds carried out during the Second World War. Only the first of several war crimes trials conducted following the Second World War, it would serve as a message to war criminals and leaders all around. Once the actual scope of the German crimes, particularly against Jews, becomes clear-cut, 12 of the 21 defendants get hanging death sentences. A German general, Alfred Jodl, is one of them. Born out of wedlock on May 10, 1890 in Würzburg, then under German Empire, Alfred Jodl. Coming from a Bavarian military family, his father was not married to Alfred's mother as a daughter of a farmer, she was deemed insufficient to wed a military officer from Bavaria. After his father retired from military duty, they married just in 1899. Alfred bore his name just from then on. Alfred grew up with younger brother Ferdinand, who would also rise to be an army commander. The philosopher was his uncle Friedrich Jodl. Alfred joined the Bavarian Army's 4th Field Artillery Regiment in July 1910. He was posted to the military school at Munich the next year, and October 1912 saw him promoted to lieutenant. September 1913 found Jodl married to Countess Irma von Bullion. The marriage was devoid of children. Starting on July 28, 1914, the First World War. Jodl participated in the Saarburg battle in August the same year. He was injured in the thigh and unable to return to the soldiers until March 1915. He received the Iron Cross Second Class for gallancy in action. Jodl was moved to the Eastern Front at the end of 1916, and in 1917 he was a battery commander of the 72nd Hungarian Field Artillery Regiment. He returned to the Western Front at the start of 1918 as a General Staff Officer, then received the Iron Cross First Class in March of the same year. On November 11, 1918, the German leaders signed the armistice in the Compiègne Forest in France, therefore ending the First World War. 10 million men lost their lives, and the war claimed new weapons like the machine gun and gas warfare caused great losses. Loss in industry and property were disastrous. The winning powers thereby forced a set of treaties upon the vanquished ones. Among the accords, the 1919 Treaty of Versailles assigned Germany responsibility for launching the war and liable for extensive material damage. The pact demilitarized the Rhineland, paid significant reparations, and penalized the Germans harshly, including the loss of 13% of their pre-war territory. Restricted to 100,000 troops, the German army was known as the Reichswehr. Alfred Jodl carried on his job as a professional soldier under the new Weimar Republic, Germany's government, from 1918 until 1933. Jodl moved to the Reichswehr Ministry in Berlin in 1924. Between 1928 and 1932 he taught tactics and war history. In February 1932 Wilhelm Keitel, his supervisor, designated him as a major. Jodl was named a group leader in the operations department of the Truppenamt in June the same year. This agency covered the existence of the banned German Army General Staff. Against direct violation of the Treaty of Versailles, Alfred Jodl actively participated in covert planning, reforming, and finally increasing the German army. German rearmament, despite its scope, remained a largely covert operation, carried out using front organizations such glider clubs for training pilots, sporting clubs, and Nazi SA militia groups for teaching infantry combat techniques even after Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party came into power in January 1933. Later on, meanwhile, this rearmament program was blatantly and extensively enlarged. Reading the map of Europe following World War I was one of the key goals of the Nazi government. Hitler and the Nazis thought the post-war international borders were unjust and illegal. Germans have been denied their right to self-determination, they said. Reading Europe's borders would enable the Nazis to accomplish two key objectives: unify all Germans in a Nazi German Empire, and gain Lebensraum, meaning living space, in Eastern Europe. The first goal would be reached by the Nazis with the acquisition of Austria. Over 3 days between March 11th and 13th, 1938, the Anschluss, the annexation of the federal state of Austria into the German Reich, took place. Many Austrians, including Austrian Nazis, supported the Anschluss as a political, social, and cultural reunion with their brother nation, Germany. Thousands of people gathered out to welcome the local son, returning to his country, Adolf Hitler. Though the leaders of the West considered the Anschluss as an invasion, not one nation moved to stop Hitler who, free from intervention, felt free to start the next phase of his plan to subjugate all of Europe. Alfred Jodl was moved to Linz in seized Austria at the end of 1938 to head the 44th Artillery Regiment. Just 1 week before the German invasion of Poland, on August 23, 1939, Adolf Hitler assigned Jodl chief of the Operations Staff of German Armed Forces High Command. Originally founded in 1938, the German Armed Forces High Command was a consolidated military command overseeing Germany's Navy, Air Force, and Army. Actually, as Germany's commander-in-chief, the founding of the High Command let Adolf Hitler unite authority. Wilhelm Keitel, chief with the status of a Reich minister, oversaw High Command and essentially ranked second in the armed forces hierarchy following Hitler. Apart from Keitel, Alfred Jodl became Hitler's main military advisor in the High Command, mostly in charge of the strategy and execution of operations. Beginning on September 1, 1939, Germany's invasion of Poland set off World War II. The campaign in Poland concluded on October 6, same year, with Germany and the Soviet Union separating and annexing the full nation. During the invasion of Denmark and Norway, codenamed Operation Weserübung, Alfred Jodl served as Chief of Staff. On April 9, 1940, Nazi Germany invaded Denmark and Norway. Denmark's significance to Germany was strategically that of a base for operations in Norway. Germany aimed to ensure important iron ore supplies from neutral Sweden, on which Nazi Germany was dependent, as well as naval ports for use against the British fleet in the North Sea and Norway. Norway turned herself to Germany barely 2 months on June 10, 1940. Invasion of Denmark lasted less than 6 hours and was the shortest military operation the Germans carried out during the war. In the tremendous wave of promotions that followed the fall of France, in June the same month, Jodl rose immediately to general, skipping the rank of lieutenant general. Alfred Jodl was occupied creating strategies for the invasion of the Soviet Union, later known as Operation Barbarossa, for the next months. Less than 3 weeks before Operation Barbarossa started, Jodl also participated in writing the Commissar Order he signed on June 6, 1941. This directive told the Wehrmacht that any political commissars were to be shot on principle whether they were captured in combat or providing opposition. Soviet Communist Party officials known as political commissars watched over its armed formations and directly answered party superiors. Starting on Sunday, the 22nd of June, 1941, Operation Barbarossa, however, German field commanders urged the cancellation of the Commissar Order in May 1942, citing considerably more fierce opposition when the Soviet troops learned of the regular commissar shootings. Along with political commissars, the Germans executed Soviet prisoners of war they considered as part of the so-called Bolshevik threat in great numbers. Jodl also signed the Commando Order, which approved and directed the assassination of enemy special operations forces. Even if they were apprehended in uniform or if they tried to turn themselves in, the Allied commandos were to be executed without trial. Jodl and Hitler disagreed often during the summer 1942 Case Blue attack plans for southern Russia. Jodl thought the German forces prepared for the invasion were too weak. Though he finally failed, he sharply attacked Hitler's participation in operational planning and the related breakup of Army Group South in early July 1942. Jodl refuted the Führer's charge that the local commanders were too accountable for the circumstances, as they had just obeyed Hitler's orders when the German onslaught stopped in the run-up to the Caucasus. In view of this open clash, Hitler intended General Friedrich Paulus to replace Jodl as soon as he would have taken Stalingrad. Never happened. Jodl, the same as with his superior Wilhelm Keitel, remained loyal to Hitler, praising him for his strategic foresight in carrying out whatever the Führer ordered, even though his criticism resulted in a cooling of the relationship with the Führer. Alfred Jodl was advanced to Colonel General in February 1944. April 18, 1944 saw the death of his wife Irma. 1 year later, on April 7, 1945, he remarried Louise von Benda, a close friend of his first wife Irma. This marriage stayed childless as well. Klaus von Stauffenberg and other conspirators aimed at killing Hitler on July 20, 1944. Present in the Wolf's Lair field headquarters, Alfred Jodl was slightly hurt when the bomb went off. Following days saw Hitler command an extensive search for conspirators that lasted for months. Many of them showed up before the infamous People's Courts for show trials, but this practice was discontinued since it provided conspirators a forum to criticize the government. Ultimately, almost 7,000 persons were arrested and 4,980 were executed, often on the most little proof. By teletype, Jodl directed the evacuation of the Norwegian populace and the burning of every dwelling east of the Lyngenfjord in the course of Operation Northern Lights so that they could not assist the Russians. October 28, 1944. Shortly following, thousands of houses were demolished and over 40,000 people were forcibly evacuated from northern Norway. April 30, 1945, Adolf Hitler killed himself. Following regional surrenders of German forces in Europe, Karl Donitz, who momentarily replaced Hitler as head of state, dispatched Alfred Jodl to sign the surrender limited to just those units still fighting the Western Allies. But American General Dwight Eisenhower insisted on the surrender of all German forces, even those engaged in Eastern combat. Eisenhower was ready to close the Western Front, so stopping Germans from escaping to the West to submit and so handing them to the oncoming Soviet forces if this demand had not been satisfied. On behalf of the German Armed Forces High Command, Donitz directed Jodl to sign, which he did on May 7, 1945 at Reims, France. The Soviet High Command responded a few hours later saying the act of surrender in Reims was unacceptable. They urged that Wilhelm Keitel, the highest commander of the German forces, should personally sign the agreement instead of Jodl, deputized by Donitz. One of the reasons was a fear new stab-in-the-back myth which maintained that certain citizens on the home front, especially Jews and communists, who they claimed had surrendered German honor to a shameful peace, betrayed the Imperial German Army, not lost World War I on the battlefield. Berlin was thus the venue for a second signing. Nazi Field Marshal Wilhelm Keitel signed the official German instrument of surrender on the evening of the 8th of May 1945, therefore completing World War II in Europe and effecting the unconditional surrender of Nazi Germany on all fronts. At last, justice caught up with Jodl when he was seized by the British troops on May 23, 1945 and convicted at the Nuremberg trials against officials of the vanquished Nazi Germany. He was found guilty of conspiracy to commit crimes against peace, planning, starting and fighting wars of aggression, war crimes and crimes against humanity. At his trial, extra allegations included abetting execution and illegal deportation. Louise, his wife, enlisted in his defense squad. Before God, before history and his people, Jodl claimed at the trial to have known nothing about the death camps where around 6 million European Jews met their death and pleaded not guilty. His lies, nonetheless, did not enable him to evade justice. The International Military Tribunal declared Alfred Jodl guilty on all 4 counts on October 1, 1946, then condemned him to death by hanging. The criminal rather than military character of his conduct denied his demand, as well as that of Wilhelm Keitel and Hermann Göring, for a military death by firing squad. American Army Sergeant John C. Woods executed him. He had no recorded pre-war experience as a hangman. It is thought that he purposefully performed poor work at his profession to cause suffering for the 10 Nazi war criminals he executed on that day, as all of their deaths were protracted, excruciating ones. Sergeant Woods executed Nazis dropped from the gallows with a drop inadequate to snap their necks, therefore causing their death by strangling that in some cases lasted several minutes. It was bad still with Alfred Jodl. Jodl was hanged after saying his last words, "I salute you, my eternal Germany, but his terrible convulsing lasted 18 agonizing minutes before he passed dead from the gallows with inadequate power to snap his neck. He was 56 years of age. His body thereafter was burned and dumped at the river Isar. None of anyone shed tears for Alfred Jodl. Thank you for watching. Please help us to produce more videos by channel subscription.